Okay, we'll try again. See how far we get this time. Next sentence of the translation. De plus, si la banque prend une garantie sur votre bien, elle sera bien couverte puisque la valeur de votre maison sera supérieure au montant du prêt. So, possible translation, furthermore, if the bank requests a secured loan on your property, it will be fully covered because the value of your property will be greater than the value of the loan. De plus, a lot of people put besides. Be very careful of besides. It doesn't mean quite the same thing. If you look in the Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary online, it says it's used for making an extra comment that adds to what you have said. I don't really want to go besides, it's too late now. But the point is, it's not just an addition, an extra comment that, okay, one thing is you don't want to go, but anyway, crucially, the important point, so even if the first point didn't exist, but the absolute crux of the matter is, it's too late anyway, so whatever has gone before, this is the most important thing. So it's not just an additional factor, it's the most important deciding factor. So as I say, not easy to use. If you're not sure, then it might be better to avoid it. With this meaning, it has other meanings as well besides. It's quite a long entry, and you can see lots of different uses as well in a corpus or in PEU too. The point here is that then, where am I? Anyway, so I would avoid besides with this meaning. Other options included furthermore or moreover. French is very rich in this kind of connector, which you can use in a wide range of situations. English isn't as good on this, and they're not as common as in French, and they tend to be more formal. So, for example, if you go into the BNC, select chart and type in moreover, and you'll see the distribution. Reset, click on chart, type in furthermore, look at the distribution. It's not what you would expect from French. It's very much, it's not at all the kind of thing you would use in spoken language in particular. They're more reserved for academic registers. Prendre une garantie, so again, think of this in the British or American or other English-speaking destination context. What it really means, okay, we are talking about France, but you have to make it intelligible to an English-speaking audience. That's the point of translation. Or readership, not audience, of course. Some of you completely changed it around and you had the bank guaranteeing the house. No, it's the house which is a guarantee for the bank. So if the bank secures the loan against your house, it takes your house as security or as a guarantee against the loan. Votre bien, a lot of people translated this as good. Good is one of those, dans le sens bien, des biens, always has an S. It's always plural. It's like means. But the means is a means to an end. It's one of those words where students like to not have the S, or a series always has an S on the end. There are some words like that, which are sometimes surprising. So, but you could avoid that. You don't need to have goods, and I don't think goods is appropriate here anyway, really. Goods tends to be transportable things. I don't think you can talk about houses as being goods. So come back to the meaning. If it means your house or flat or other domicile, then property is the word I think we would use, the automatic word here. Elle, some of you translated as she. If elle refers back to the bank, I'm sorry, the bank does not have sex in English. Banks are not sexy in many languages, but certainly not in English. Bien couverte, I wasn't keen on well covered. Not easy to actually say why, and this is where a corpus comes in handy. If you go into COCA, for example, type in well covered, you'll see 71 occurrences. But it's important not just to say, okay, 71, therefore exists, it's even relatively frequent. 71 is not negligible. But if you look at the concordance lines, and this is crucial to do, you'll see a lot of them are talking about being a story being well covered by the media. That's quite a different thing to being protected, like the bank seeking to protect itself here. A lot of them are a physical covering. Make sure that what you're cooking is well covered, for example. Some of them are slightly similar. So I admit it's not a clear-cut 100% case, but this might allow you to go a little bit further. If you select adverb, which is square brackets R asterisk, and look at the so adverb and covered in the word box, then click on collocates insurance, you'll find things like adequately, automatically, fully. So you can use a corpus to give you new ideas which you hadn't had otherwise. People often say, well, how can I find something new in a corpus? Well, it's not just for checking what you know, but if it's a part of speech tagged corpus, you can do that. So you're looking for adverb covered, which might be well or might be something else. in the context of insurance, and you come up with things like, as I say, adequately, automatically, or fully. Supérieur, in the EEL, the first definition is better in quality than somebody or something else, and there is that in-quality element. It's not just figures, but a judgment, a subjective judgment. The same thing applies to interesting, which we have in this text, which has a meaning of value, which it doesn't really in English. It has a subjective judgment attached to it, or important as well. You can talk about one thing being more important than the other, important than the other, meaning it's bigger. It doesn't have that meaning in English. It's a judgment which you attach to it. If you're not convinced, then look at the collocations of superior in one of the two corpora to check this. Next sentence, si vous avez du mal à gérer votre budget sans le poids d'un crédit immobilier, le banquier aura probablement du mal à vous faire confiance. If you find it difficult to manage your monthly budget even without a mortgage, the bank will be unlikely to have full confidence in you. Si vous avez du mal à, the automatic translation is have difficulties. Not key is really not something we say very much. Look in the corpus, you won't find very many occurrences for the very frequent equivalent in French. It's much less frequent in English, and it's if you have difficulty, it's better than difficulties. But even so, I don't think that's the obvious idiomatic choice in English. If you find it difficult to, if you find it hard to, much more likely, I think. Si, think what it really means, this whole sentence. If you have money problems without a loan, then you will find it much more difficult with a loan. If A is already hard for you, then B is going to be much harder still. And that's the meaning which needs to come through. Le point d'un crédit immobilier, of course, point means weight, but not always and for all time. You don't always have to translate point as weight. When it's the best translation, you do. When it's not the best translation, you don't. So every context is going to be different, and every context implies its own choices. I prefer burden here, personally. But if you have even in the structure of the sentence, as I said just earlier, if you make it clear that even if even this is difficult, then this is going to be more difficult, then perhaps you don't even need to translate point, because that it serves as an intensifier. And if you have even, that can intensify as well. Le banquier again could be bank. Aura probablement du mal, same questions with difficulty above, might find a difficulty, might have difficulty, might be unwilling to, be less likely to, and so on. Don't choose aura probablement du mal, might have difficulty, or whatever is the closest translation, because it's the closest translation. The closest translation sometimes is the best translation, sometimes it isn't. Proximity, the word-to-word level, simply isn't a criterion. You choose what is the best translation overall in this context. A couple of people, I thought there would be more, but I'm glad to see not, tried to use hardly. Hardly can translate as difficilement, but most of the time not. It's more likely when it means à peine. So if you're not clear on that, PEU or a dictionary to see how to use hardly. À vous faire confiance, to trust you or to trust in you, nuance in meaning, but you don't have to have either of those anyway. Might not think you're a good bet, might think you're not reliable, might doubt your potential, might not have complete confidence in you. Lots of different things you could do. Next sentence, mais si au contraire vous prouvez que vous parvenez à épargner la même somme depuis de longues années, vous marquerez des points. On the other hand, if you can show that you've been able to save a regular amount for a number of years, you will gain credibility. So, au contraire, be very careful with besides. It's a word which doesn't mean quite what you think it means coming from French. On the contrary, is not often a good translation for au contraire. In the Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary, it's used to introduce a statement that says the opposite of the last one. And the example given is, it must have been terrible. On the contrary, I enjoyed every minute. So it's not just giving two possibilities. It's saying the first one is wrong, is bad, is incorrect. There's a contradiction is involved. It must have been terrible. On the contrary, I enjoyed every minute. It wasn't terrible. Okay? So it's not just two options, but a real contradiction. I put it into Coca, on the contrary. And the first two examples I get, there has been no change then. On the contrary, there has been a very marked change. Okay, it's a real contradiction. The second example, Don Quixote never expects things to look after him. On the contrary, he's always making himself responsible. So you're saying even when it's the same person, you're not contradicting somebody else, you're giving the wrong version, then you're saying that this is wrong, and you're going on to say that. So, he doesn't do this, this is what he does do. Vous pouvez, again, you show or you can show or demonstrate or possibly prove, it's one possibility amongst others. Parvenez, have managed or to or have been able to. Notice that achieve is followed by a noun, not a verb. Look in the EELD. That's all you need for that, really. Depuis de longues années, of course, all years are equally long, and we don't talk about une petite minute, a small minute, a short minute in English. The same way we do in French. The languages visualize time slightly differently. So come back to the real meaning. What does de longues années mean? It means lots of years, several years, a number of years. And don't just miss it out either. Depuis, inevitably, one or two people, 4 years, since years, well, you really have to know this. Any dictionary, practical English usage, depuis should be something you've got sorted out by L3. And this has an effect on the tense of the verb when you're translating parvenez. The translations I gave above were have managed to, have been able to. Traditionally, using a present when you should have a present perfect, or vice versa, is considered a large error, and if you go onto the CAPES, then this is the kind of thing that would be very severe on. So it's worth finding out more about practical English usage 455 to 460. Vous marquerez des points. A lot of people put score points. Yes, score points exist, and it can be a translation equivalent for marquer des points, but not in this context, because score points means to score points over somebody else. It's an element of rivalry between two people or two teams, or you and other competitors. So it's not appropriate here because you're not doing somebody else down. You're not defeating somebody else. You're just putting yourself up. That's all. So do be careful. You can find it in the dictionary, you can find it in the corpus, but it doesn't have the meaning which is appropriate here. You need to check the usage as well. You might have score a point, but otherwise come back to the real meaning. What does it actually mean? It means you'll make a good impression. It'll count in your favour. Something like that. Okay, moving on to the third video in a few seconds.